Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Handhelds. I'm Joey, and today we're going to be doing a thorough review of the Anbernic RG35XX. Once again, if you've seen my other videos, full disclosure, this device was sent to me for review by a handheld retailer called Lit NXT. I'll leave a link in the description to the store. Check them out. Use code LITNXT for an extra 10% off as well. Let's jump in. This is a great little vertical handheld. At a price of $56 US plus shipping directly from Anbernic, or $62 with free shipping and 10% off from Lit NXT, you can't go wrong with this quasi Game Boy device if you want something to play everything up to and including PlayStation 1. Since I got it, I've honestly been using it more than my other devices, my beloved RG405M included. There's just something fun and easy about picking up a device as small as this and walking around the house or doing other things while playing. It's a different experience. There's a few negatives, of course, and we'll get into them throughout the video. Side note, if you end up ordering one after watching the video, make sure you check my other video on a setup guide for this device to help make things easy for you. As always, links in the description to help you for ordering. Now, let's dive in. From a specs perspective, this thing is pretty small, at just 4.6 inches high and 3.2 inches wide. It has a 3.5-inch IPS 640 by 480 screen and 256 megabytes of RAM. It only runs Linux as an operating system, and has a 2600 mAh battery that lasts about 5 hours. It also has HDMI out via a mini HDMI port. It doesn't have Wi-Fi, which is an absolute pain for me, and I'll explain more. Let me walk you through an actual scenario. It was late at night, I was lying down on my couch, and I came across a recommended Pokemon ROM hack that I've never seen or played. Now, to load this game onto the 35XX, I'd have to get up, walk all the way down to the basement, turn on my PC, take out the SD card from the device, download the ROM hack files, patch it to the ROM, move it to my SD card, eject, and put it back into the device. That would be your steps if you forget a game or see one you want online like I did. Instead, I picked up my RG405M, downloaded and patched using the Android apps, and I was ready to go in a few short minutes. Not even mentioning retro achievements, the lack of Wi-Fi in the RG35XX is a major misstep, and I find the act of removing an SD card often to be just archaic in nature. I've removed and added the SD card in this device more times in a week than I have in my other devices in an entire year. Now, as far as performance goes, you can basically expect to play everything up to and including PS1, with minor handfuls of games that require some extra tweaks. Now, when I say up to PS1, that doesn't include Nintendo 64. I've had weird experiences with slowdown in some Game Boy Advance games, and other stuff sparingly, but it's very rare and not at all the norm. So if you're looking for something that you can just play your favorite 8 and 16-bit era games on, this is it. Let's talk about the build quality and feel, and surprisingly, it feels pretty good in my hands, even though it does weigh almost as much as the RG353V at 165 grams. It's small, let's not understate that, and I did find my hands cramping a bit throughout some play sessions. I found myself missing my horizontal handhelds quite a bit, and if you recall, I had the same issues with the RG353V, so it may just be that verticals are not for me or meant to be uncomfortable for a long period of time. However, being able to one-handed play Pokemon is a great feature, and something I did quite often. D-pad aside, the buttons, feel, and quality are all top-notch, as you'd expect from Anbernic. The D-pad itself is not super great with diagonals, and just in general. You can easily move your character in different directions by holding a single side of the D-pad. This is definitely an area that could be improved upon, and many people have been using tape mods to get around this. On the audio side, it's also not great. Look, this device is $50. I'm not expecting the world here. but the audio is a bit distorted coming out of the speaker at higher volumes, and not exactly audiophile quality. Here, have a listen. So as you can hear, it's passable. That's about as good as a grade I can give it, but it's not a deal breaker in any way, just something to be aware of. Another area that I have issues with and have to constantly remind myself of the price of this device is the screen. I did a comparison in my unboxing video, and changing operating systems to GarlicOS didn't fix this. The screen is really washed out in comparison to other handhelds like the RG353V and RG405M. It's not a huge deal breaker, but it's definitely noticeable to me, especially as I go back and forth between devices often. Let's talk about competitors to the 35XX. The most popular competitor is the Miyoo Mini Plus. Miyoo had a huge hit with the original Mini, and the Plus builds upon that by being slightly bigger and having Wi-Fi. I actually have a Miyoo Mini Plus on order and coming in the next few weeks, so I'll be doing a separate review and setup guide on that device. But let's talk about the comparisons. The Miyoo Mini Plus has Wi-Fi, and the 35XX, as we've talked about before, does not. But the 35XX does have HDMI out for those that want that feature. The Miyoo Mini Plus doesn't. The Miyoo also has a slight history of build quality issues, with the common joke to be that if you looked at the Miyoo wrong, it breaks. Lastly, they are almost always sold out and hard to get without going to a third-party reseller. So thankfully, the company that provided my 35XX, Lit NXT, has them in stock right now for $72 with free shipping. So I'll have a link to that as well in the description if you're more interested in that device. Okay, let's talk about the operating system for a bit. I have zero interest in the stock offerings on these devices, and so as you've seen in my setup video, I've installed GarlicOS on this. Garlic is a pretty good operating system here, with cool features like the recents page that shows snapshots of your save states. Otherwise, it's a pretty serviceable Linux front end. Nothing crazy here. It shows platforms, titles, and you can add box art. I do find it missing a lot of features though. Namely, there's no way to see a number for percentage of battery remaining, and you can only tell when you're in your last third of battery charge by looking at the LED and seeing if it's red. I'd love to just be able to see the battery percentage number and the actual time when holding down the menu button in-game where the hotkeys are. It would live perfectly there. Another major annoyance is that to turn off the device, it's one button press. But to turn on the device, you have to hold it for at least 3.5 seconds for the LED to turn green. And then it's a total of 10.26 seconds to get to the main GarlicOS screen. That's way too long. I'd love to have a 2-second hold option, or even 1.5. And I get why it's not default, it's to prevent accidental presses, but the option would be great for those of us that aren't worried about that happening. Lastly, I mentioned small performance hiccups, which is fine, but I've had the system sort of freeze on saving state to shut down, or go back to the menu for a good 4 to 5 seconds. It's kind of scary when you're saving, so less of that please. And if we're talking comparisons to the Miyoo Mini Plus, Onion OS is a lot more full-featured as an operating system than current Garlic, so just keep that in mind as well. Let's jump into the fun part, the game showcase. Look, there's not much to comment on here. These games will run and play great. So I'll just show a showcase of different systems to just give you an idea of how they look. I'm not big on shaders or overlays, but you can definitely add them to RetroArch if you want. Instead, for the games you'll see, they're going to have their native aspect ratios, so you'll see black bars on the top and bottom, or left and right. I find myself playing a lot of ROM hacks on this device, as you'll see in the upcoming games, and this device is perfect for Game Boy Advance ones. And lastly, before talking about PS1, Super Nintendo and Super Nintendo ROM hacks are perfect here as well. As cramped as my hands might get, I don't find it hard to control in tight spots like a lot of A Plumber for All Seasons, and have been having a great time using this device instead of my 405M for Super Nintendo. For PS1, as long as you're fine with 1x resolution and no analog sticks, it works. You also want to have aspect ratio off for this one, like I showed in my setup video, as it'll go widescreen if you turn it on. Otherwise, PS1 games, minus a handful, run great here as well, and would be the cutoff for what this device can do as of right now. And that's it for the showcase. Let's talk about my overall thoughts and pros and cons. For the positives, I really like the feel of this device, size and quality. The weight is distributed nicely and it feels great in your hands. The pricing makes it a perfect budget handheld for everything up to and including PS1. And with how big the community support is for this device, it's an easy recommendation to get help through the vast number of guides and posts out there. Hey, by the way, have you seen my setup guide? Lastly, I find it's a better option than the RG35V, especially as an entry-level handheld. Now, for the negatives. The lack of Wi-Fi is a huge issue, and it should just be a standard option in any handheld, especially in 2023. The D-pad could stand to be a lot better, and the screen is washed out compared to other Anbernic handhelds. Lastly, small issues with GarlicOS make the device a bit more cumbersome to use. But it's still the best operating system option right now. I'm super impressed with this device and can easily recommend it to anyone looking for an entry-level budget handheld in a Game Boy form factor. It's a great stocking stuffer for Christmas, but by then Anbernic will have released 10 more revisions. I don't think you can go wrong with this, or even the Miyoo Mini Plus, as long as you're okay with the cons that I mentioned. If the rumors are true that they're making a Wi-Fi version of this device, like Russ at Retro Gamecore mentioned, I'll be first in line as that's my only real gripe here. So that's going to be it for this one. Hope you liked the video and hope you all have a good one.